Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say it bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful August the 18th, 2020. Guando Deportes, Big C, will be calling in a little bit later after the Big C pause, saying bonjour, Big C Sports. Really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. And also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV. All you be looking at is still a picture. It's off there at 11 War. Big C. Man, I love doing the pause. Michelle Obama, former First Lady, did the pause last night. And just a beautiful person. I want to say that I will never pause on the Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones get help. And there's a lot of times when people are not sure what to do. But if you know that there's help, all you do is pick up the phone and you call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Sometimes people say, well, how are they going to call if they're going through issues? You can call for them. Just like every now and then you'll see where a car may be on the side of the road. If it's in flames, people call 911. They don't have the people in the burning car call it. You can call it when people are in a burning car or a burning house. It's a good way to help people who need help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple. Recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. And sports teams are starting to do it too. You can watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. For those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can definitely get some help. I love how we mix our real estate with the sports show. There was a person in the past. I worked with some people, and we had mortgage companies all over this country. From Florida, we had mortgage companies Miami, Florida. We were up in Washington, D.C. We had mortgage companies in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We had mortgage companies in Dallas, Texas. We were in Atlanta, Georgia. We had them in Denver, Colorado. We had mortgage companies all over. We had Las Vegas, Nevada, had mortgage companies in Reno, Nevada, even had mortgage company up in Seattle, Washington. And I know a lot of times people say, well, that's a lot of mortgage companies to have, but they were out there, even had an office in Hawaii, and that was back before the crash happened in real estate. And so there was so much going on, and then offices all over California, Northern California, Southern California, and then being able to talk about sports as well as football and basketball and baseball, MMA, boxing, all of that stuff. It's all part of business, and I love being a part of the Big C teams. I really implore people who are looking for work, Go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. I want to talk about what happened. There's a lot of things happening in the world of sports. And I think I'm always paying homage to my beautiful mom because she's taught me so many things that have come true. And when I was a little boy and you're a child, you can listen to your parents or you can doubt your parents. I've always listened to my mother and my father, but especially my mother. And when she would always say, you know, I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to tell you what she would often say. When we did something wrong, she'd say, give your heart to God and your behind to me. You know, sometimes I thought that was a cold way. I thought it was a cold way, Big C, of getting a point across. But Mama always got her point across. I love talking to that woman. She's beautiful and intelligent, and it taught me to look up to that, Big C. I want to go to the convention last night. I know a lot of people want to know who won the game, and they can't wait to see who's going to win in some sporting event. And I love sports too. But I implore women the same way I implore my mother. I vote her the number one mother in the universe. And I mean that. She's taking care of me, brothers and sisters, cousins, nieces, nephews, grandchildren. And as a black woman, you know, she grew up in Jim Crow, but left the Jim Crow South and came out to California to make things easier for her children. But I want to tell you, it's something called the reticular activating system. I know a lot of guys want to talk about who dropped 51 points in a basketball game or 57 points, Donovan Mitchell. They want to talk about Luka Doncic scoring the most points ever for a rookie in his first playoff game. I think it was 42 points. I may be off by a couple of numbers. And that's fair. There's nothing wrong with that. But for women, I really mean this. I love talking to women. I've always had an affinity for what the wisdom of women is, from my grandparents, my grandmothers on both sides. And we called my mother, you know, of course we called my mom, and my mother's mom, we called her Medea. And her name was really Ruby, but we called her Medea, just like a lot of people from the South do. And then on my father's side, we called her Alberta. And these women were very strong and prescient and very successful in life and raised good families. Let me tell you what I saw last night. At the Democratic Convention, I saw what grace was. I saw what beauty was. I saw what intelligence was. I saw what ethereal was. I saw someone who has knowledge that's ontological. I saw someone who was empathic, who was bold, a visionary. I saw someone who had class. And I saw what Big C and I have been saying. Maybe God's listening, because we're the only sports show in the universe that was saying, you can Google our show, the world needs to hear from more black women, like the Harriet Tubmans of the world, the Rosa Parks of the world, and my mother, of course. Women who didn't have a silver spoon in their mouths, but they prospered anyway. They prospered against all odds, and they made sure that whatever they wanted, they asked God for favor, but they did it the right way. And when Michelle Obama, when she spoke last night, former First Lady Michelle Obama, you can contrast her to the First Lady now. You didn't see Michelle Obama spread eagle naked in a magazine. Nowhere in the universe you won't find that. And I'm not knocking women who want to spread eagle and get naked in a magazine. Nothing wrong with that either. This is free world. Do what you want to do. But to become the First Lady, and that's the image, contrast that to Michelle Obama. She rebuked the Confederate flag lover and statues lover, Confederate statues lover, and defender, and a sexist, racist, Governor Wallace type, Donald Trump. He's having a tantrum today. And that comes from inside the White House. He really loves the name White House. It's the Oval Office, but we call it both. That's how they named it back in the day. But let me ask you a question. I know you want to know who won the game. Would you believe that most of these top athletes come from the womb of a black woman? Would you believe that? But this is more important than just saying who won a game. I really believe it's more important than who won a game, as all over the world, in fact, all over the universe, people are asking, can we get sports back? And especially in the United States, they're begging young black boys to get out there and play. But what I loved about seeing my mother every day I would come home from school is she always greeted me with a hug and a smile. But more important than the greeting with the hug and the smile, I knew that she would give me a fair deal. I knew that she would be honest with me, even if I didn't want to hear it. And especially if I didn't want to hear it, Big C. Everybody understands that. It's good having a mother like that. But I want to tell you something, too. I've always said the reason more black women should have opportunities in media because we can stand up to xenophobia. We've seen it. We can stand up to bigotry. We've seen it. We can stand up to sexism. We've seen it. I've been employing more stations to give black women more airtime. I say go create your own airtime, but mainstream's going to just carve out a small airtime for you. And she told the truth, and the universe knows that she told the truth about Donald Trump. She told the truth. Here's a man in Donald Trump that's still trying to sue to keep his tax returns from being shown. It's been almost 4 years, and he says he's under an audit. The IRS does not audit for 4 years. That's called a lie. That's what my mother would tell Donald Trump. Give your heart to God and your backside to me, Big C. He would know what it means. But think about it. Even Chris Wallace from Fox, he applauded Michelle Obama in the convention speech. She sliced and diced up a man who was not honest, a man who has no character, a man who has no morality, a man who pays a porn star $135,000 to go to bed with him while his children are part of his administration. And who knows where his wife was. But men and women do what they want to do. I've known women who go and they have extra coffee at night at 1 o'clock in the morning coming home from a coffee shop. Or they go out with their girlfriends for about 20 minutes and then meet up who they really want to meet up with for 3 hours. And women do what they want to do. I've known madams. I've known women that were part of the clergy. People do what they want. Women just cover it up better, Big C. They really do, Big C. You know, and that's okay. Still, they have to get her groove back. That was a great movie, Angela Bassett, back in the day. I believe Wesley Snipes was in it also. And the late Whitney Houston, I believe. But I want to go to what I saw in Michelle Obama. Remember, there was a guy on the radio, and he called black women nappy-headed hoes. He's since passed away, and I think his name was Imus. Old, wrinkled-up white man. You know, the guys that have to pay women to go to bed with them. But Imus got the chance to have a good career. But he's never showed respect to the women that came out of Africa that looked like Michelle Obama, according to Dr. Leakey and Gregory Mendel. All lives came from Africa. I know you want to watch the game. I know you want to know who won. You want to know how big and fat somebody is. But this is important to me. Because for the most part, even in the sports business, you can probably count on one hand how many black women you see on TV. You don't see them doing play-by-play for the NBA. We have some white women that do play-by-play for the NBA, which is mostly a black league, about 85% black. But you'll see white women doing play-by-play. You don't see black women doing it. And the WNBA, you'll see some of both. You'll even see some white women doing NFL football. Isn't that something? About 80% of that league is black. You don't see black women doing play-by-play NFL football. And you don't even hear about that stuff unless you're listening to Big C Sports. So what is it about Michelle Obama that you don't get from mainstream women? And I feel, I may be wrong, but if I'm wrong, prove it to me. Because when I hear a guy like Chris Wallace, who's a veteran news anchor, when he praised former First Lady Michelle Obama, not only as an African-American woman, but a very powerful orator. The universe listens when she speaks. And you think about it. This Democratic National Convention, late last night, a Fox News host stated that she really flayed, sliced, and diced President Trump. All she did was tell the truth. All she did was tell the truth. Even for the women that vote for him. Where's Stormy Daniels? How many women teach their daughters to go out and sell your bodies to men? I'm not knocking it. People do it. It's the oldest profession in the world. But how many women look up to the man that's paying $135,000 or even $35 to go to bed with another woman, and he's the president of the United States of America? Now, people do what they want to do. I understand that. Nobody is perfect. I know I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to throw rocks in a glass house. But what I loved last night is the whole world saw Michelle Obama, former First Lady, She dealt with death threats because of the birtherism that this garbage politician Donald Trump was espousing. You know, the man who's suing to keep his tax returns from being shown. Even the Justice Department is saying that they're looking into his background for bank fraud. Donald Trump, whose father was arrested at a Ku Klux Klan rally in 1927, and he became president anyway because a lot of white women voted for him. And you got to be honest. You know he does not have nearly the character that she has. And you women know that's true. And you women, especially the white women, I think 52% of you voted for him last time. There's no way you would put your daughters in a room, your teenage daughters, in a room with Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. They were best friends. Jeffrey Epstein was the best friend of Donald Trump. You know, the guy that was molesting young girls. And you say, well, he's just, that's what guys do. It's not what guys do. And he was sent to prison. And somehow ended up hanged in a maximum security prison. Read between the lines, people. And so when Michelle Obama stood up to that, you know she stood up for all women. She stood up for all women, not just in the United States, but women all over the universe. Michelle Obama does not have to lay naked in a magazine with her legs gapped open to get the attention of people around the world. Melania Trump has. It doesn't stop them from getting to the White House. And people say there's no such thing as white skin privilege. Just think about it. Everybody who's looking for someone to be honest with them, you want a fair deal. You want a fair deal when you're talking to a bank to get a loan. You want a fair deal when you're trying to get a house, when you're trying to do business. You want a fair deal. It's so important that we have people who will give us a fair deal. And when you saw Michelle Obama last night, when she talked about it being, this is about the soul of our country. I know there's some people who don't care about the character of people. And you would even put your daughters in the hand of a guy like Jeffrey Epstein because he had money. I've known women who were like that. Girl, if he got some money, you better get on that. And Donald Trump is his best friend. Birds of a feather flock together. You think about how she talks with authenticity. She's amazing at that. Her voice was very clear. She is telling people about character, and character matters. And she asks for your ballot. And she's trying to get everybody to really focus on a call to action. That's get out and vote. It's not about Democrat or Republican. I have some friends who happen to be Republican and Democrat, some independent. I voted both at times in my life. I'm not a monolithic group. I have my own independent thinking. But I know character when I see it because I get the chance to see my mother every day of my life. And I thank God for that. I really do. And so when people want to talk about black women, you know, we've heard that they've just been put down over the years by people like George, like Governor Wallace, and the segregation now, segregation forever. Even this knucklehead Donald Trump, he told white suburban women, he said, if you vote for Biden, you know that they're gonna have people moving into your neighborhood. He's talking about people of color and driving down your property values and miscegenating with your daughters. I wonder how much of a knucklehead Ben Carson, the head of the Housing and Urban Development of HUD, and here's his boss Donald Trump saying, when guys like Ben Carson move into your neighborhood, it's going to drive down property values. They're going to want to sleep with your daughters. And he said even Surgeon General Jerome Adams, the Surgeon General, Trump says when people like these guys move into your neighborhood, you know, people of color, it's going to drive down your values. And Surgeon General Jerome Adams worked for that garbage of a man. They didn't even stand up to him, and they're black men. And I'm telling every black man, what a shame. You didn't even stand up for yourself. But Michelle Obama, as a black woman, she even stood up for you guys. She stood up for every person of color and every woman by calling this man what he is. It is what it is. We know COVID-19 has been spiking. POTUS tells people go back to work and don't worry about it being safe because he says it's safe. There was a lady that gave a speech last night about her father. He had a pre-existing condition. It was called listening to a liar. And now he's passed away from COVID-19. He was a man that would not wear a mask. I know you want to know who won the game. I know you want to know who scored more points in the game. But for women, if you don't see the benefit of having a woman of integrity and character, and she doesn't have to open her legs to get your attention, I hope that makes sense to some men. Some men, you want to get their attention, open your legs, tell them you go to bed with them. They'll say whatever they got to say to get in bed. And Donald Trump knows that, even though he paid $135,000 to go to bed with a woman to be number 2,000. But that's his choice. But I'm just saying, you women, you have a choice. You got a choice coming up in this election. You can vote for class. You can vote for people that are going to tell you the truth, even if it might be a little bit painful. Sometimes it's better to have the painful truth than someone who's going to lie to you all the time. And so when you think about it, Donald Trump's having some type of they're saying he's having panic attacks. Michelle Obama told the truth, but she said he's clearly in over his head. He has no class. Here's a man in Donald Trump that pays more homage to Vladimir Putin, who had a bounty on United States troops, and he says that he's going to turn his back on the NBA if they take a knee, if they don't salute the flag, and he ran 5 times, had 5 deferments, 6 bankruptcies. Think about that. So even today you hear about Trump celebrating women's rights, which is an oxymoron with an attack on First Lady Michelle Obama. You don't have to always like what people are saying. You don't have to like what I'm saying. But if something is true, it's true. You think about this, women. An event aimed at highlighting the 100th anniversary of a woman's right to vote. President grab him by the PUSS, bloppity blop blop, Donald Trump, and you'll get away with it. You know, it's locker room behavior. You men who voted for him, tell that to your daughters when they get sexually assaulted. Just tell them it's locker room behavior. I voted for the guy that told other men it's okay to do that. So President Trump, it's the 100th anniversary of a woman's right to vote. He despairs the country's most admired woman, Michelle Obama. You understand that? He has no class. People say, well, he's a fighter. He fights back. I'm sure those women that he has 25 sexual assault lawsuits against, they sued him 25 times. His money makes things go away. I'm sure those women were fighting back too. But you got to understand, the man's having a temper tantrum, and some of you would still allow your daughters to hang out with Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And you know it because you voted for the garbage. I was so proud of her as a woman. And you won't find any sports show in the universe that will defend the honor of black women the way I do. I'm asking for black women to get more opportunities in politics. I'm asking for black women to get more airtime on TV programs, sports and news and entertainment. You don't hear the sports guys doing that. They're arguing about who's bigger and stronger and faster. I've already seen it. So you think about it during today's event, Trump commemorated the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, the women's right to vote, by pardoning women's rights activist Susan B. Anthony. Later today, he will be signing a full and complete pardon for Susan B. Anthony. She was never pardoned, he said during remarks in the Blue Room. And think about it. She was tried and found guilty. She was tried and found guilty of voting in the 1872 presidential election. And he said the pardon was being prepared right now and will be signed later today. They're blocking voting rights now. The John Lewis Voting Act. Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. They're taking out post offices. They're taking out postal drop boxes. That's Donald Trump's garbage. The president has repeatedly appealed to what he calls suburban housewives. That means white ladies for you people in the South with the Confederate flags. In his efforts to court the key voting bloc of suburban white women. If you just understand, if you really love Trump, ask him about Jeffrey Epstein. What does he know about Jeffrey Epstein? Why was he after teenage white girls? That wasn't black men taking those white girls to some island, sexually assaulting them. That was Donald Trump. It's real. I told you, my mother always told me the truth. It wasn't always pleasant to hear, but I knew she was going to feed it to me, and she was going to tell it to me real. Like the universe is real. When you look up in the nighttime, you can see the moons, the stars, other planets, other solar systems, other galaxies. You can see it at nighttime. It's real. But some people are afraid of the night. They say, turn the light on, it's too dark. That's what Donald Trump is telling suburban white women. Turn the lights on, it's too dark. because the black people are coming in. He's a fearmonger about fair housing laws meant to combat segregation in recent weeks. He also had the largest lawsuit by the Justice Department against not renting to black Americans. That's Donald Trump. His lawsuit. It was back in the 70s. I believe 1973 in New York City. He also resorted to the racist and sexist tropes to describe presumptive Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris. Isn't that something? The two women that he's ostracized and tried to be a racist, sexist pig to in the last week have been Kamala Harris and former First Lady Michelle Obama. Two beautiful black women. Asked to clarify his perception of the suburban women voter on Tuesday, Trump again used the word housewives. Though most suburban women have to go to work. You know, some of them make $135,000 an hour, even though it only lasted about 4 minutes when he was with Stormy Daniels. That's what he thinks of women. If you're naked in a magazine or you're making porn movies, Donald Trump will find you. And he says he has more character than anybody. And I'm saying that because a lot of you women with daughters, you're going to vote for him anyway. And you dumb husbands would rather watch a sports game than realize you got a guy that's telling other men it's okay to sexually assault your wives and your daughters. You just want to know who won that baseball game, who won that football and basketball game. Before I get on a little bit more sports, I just wanted to say I appreciate Michelle Obama. It's important. I just wish that everybody would really mean it when they say they want liberty and justice for all. I think over 125 black women have run for congressional districts this year in the United States of America. So no matter what you do, it took a black woman to stand up to this bigot. You know, his wife won't do it. Melania Trump, she's scared. There's some type of emotional abuse going on in that relationship, and I've been told that by women who went through the same thing. She's shaking in her boots when she's around him, and he's a horrible person, and people knew it. And some of you like men who hang out with guys like Jeffrey Epstein and grab your daughters by the PUS blobbity blop blop. Some of you men will vote for that guy anyway. They say the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Maybe you wish you could live like him. I don't know. But for men who want to protect your daughters, and I'm one of those men, look at Michelle Obama and just oppose her to Donald Trump. He'll be out of office soon. He's already trying to start some shenanigans with voting. And some people will say, well, what would it take to have you say, well, we want decency? I'm not telling you who to vote for. But Biden has my vote and Harris has my vote because I want what my mother taught me when I was a young boy. I want decency back in the White House. I want decency back in the White House. American, please vote. Pay attention. Text VOTE to 26797. Text the word VOTE to 26797. Register. Text all your friends. Tell them Big C and the NFL said vote now. Vote now. Vote forever. That's opposite of Governor Wallace with his segregation now, segregation never. Make this the biggest vote in the history of the universe. I really know that we can do a lot to make our country great. Big C Sports, we want to be the new sexy. We want to be clever. We want to be engaging. We want to be bold. We want to be thrilling. We want to be funny. We want to be thoughtful. We want to be provoking. If you're doing something, if it feels good and you want some more, just Google it. I love doing what we do. My heart feels emboldened by seeing former First Lady Michelle Obama in the class that she has to tell other women to be the best you can be. And when you're dealing with a bigot, you got to stand up for yourself. Don't put your head between your tails. Don't let them make you afraid to speak. It took the former First Lady to speak. You think Donald Trump is going to put Melania Trump out there when people Google that she's spread eagle in a magazine and she's going to represent the United States of America as the First Lady? I don't think any woman would tell her daughter to choose that profession. Melania Trump did. That's how Trump found her, looking through magazines. He wasn't reading. He's looking at pictures. But I just want to tell you I'm proud. Tell the truth. People don't have to like it, but they can never say they didn't hear the truth. Man, I love what I'm seeing in the world of women really standing up. We're going to come right back and talk a little bit more about sports and even some politics and all the things going on in the universe. All right, we are back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps that you can follow Big C Sports on, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. We actually have Big C on the phone now. I was just talking to Big C about some of the things going on with just seeing class again, and Michelle Obama speaking to women all over the world about just having some class and about not being afraid to stand up to bullies and asking for what you want. And of course, POTUS is trying to tear her down today, and we're on the 100-year anniversary of women having the right to vote, the 9th Amendment. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you have a first lady that's in the White House now that can't speak English or understand any American politics or what women have had to gone through in this country, Charlton, who was paid for to come into this country and didn't work their way up through the ranks, would have no empathy towards that.
Yeah, it's very true. So everybody get out there and just read who you're voting for. I really think this country is amazing because we can have opinions about anything as long as it's factual. If you're not factual, we look pretty bad. That's why I say Google everything we say. Big C, I know the NBA, I'm telling you, people say the ratings are down, whatever. People have other issues going on right now. OKC and Houston having a go at it tonight. Orlando, surprisingly, at least in my eyes, they got a win over the #1 seed in the East. They beat Milwaukee by the score 122-110. Anyone can win the first game. They did it last year also. I think they did it to Toronto. But I was surprised to see that score, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, if you look at Milwaukee, Charlton, they have not been dominant since being in the bubble. Giannis has not played well overall. I mean, he did score 37 points today, but, there was an answer from Orlando throughout this series against Milwaukee. So you think about when you look at this bubble situation, Charlton, and players have fresh legs. That's the thing you got to consider in this scenario. Orlando is playing basically home games. When you look at all the teams that are in the playoffs, they're the only team playing on home court. So them coming out playing in an environment that they're accustomed to being in plays a huge difference down there, Charlton.
It really does play a huge difference. Miami, they got some home cooking with a 113-101 win over Indiana. And the game that's underway as we speak, you have the Portland Trail Blazers. And the records don't really matter because we had such a long pause. They're 35-39. They're playing the Lakers, the #1 seed in the West, and they're 52-19. And so we'll see what happens with that game. But I want to take you back. Luka Doncic last night, and they had the loss against the LA Clippers. It looked like Dallas was going to take out the Clippers, Big C, and Porzingis obviously couldn't keep his head cool, and they had some pushing and shoving, and he got tossed out of the game. But I think for what happened in that game last night, I hate to see when guys are kicked out of a game, especially in a playoff game. You would seem to have a little bit more leniency, my opinion. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they're going to sit there and talk about it's the rule of the NBA. But there's common sense rules also when you look at a situation as a referee. You're walking, okay, guys, let's break it up.
Yeah.
You don't walk in all out automatically and throw in technical fouls. So, I mean, that's the non-discretion of the referees in that situation, which was a bad look for the NBA. You take a game that's totally competitive and you make it uncompetitive by taking the second-best player out of the lineup. You didn't throw a punch, you just pushed the guy back to get separation.
Yeah.
And so as an official, you got to look at that. I mean, because if you go by the rule of the law in the NBA, then James Harden wouldn't be scoring 37 points a game. He'd probably be scoring 7. Because think about every step back three-point shot.
5 steps.
He takes 4 steps back.
Yeah.
You don't call that. You talk about players going to the basket where you're allowed 3, 4, 5 steps in a layup.
Yeah.
And I've heard referees talk, well, it was the continuation of the move to the basket.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's discretionary on how officials make calls. But, in the situation in the playoffs, as you say, referees and officials should not be determining the outcome of a contest.
Yeah. I even heard the great Larry Bird say, do you think they paid to see you call fouls or see me drop 30 points in the game? Big C, it's all fair and level war. I do give Luka Doncic a lot of, pat on the back. I believe he's the highest scoring player ever in his first playoff game in a playoff game. So he really showed that he could play last night. Also, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they combined to score 56 points. And I thought if there was a game that Dallas was going to get, it would have been last night, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they had the game, Charlton. They were up by 5 until Porzingis was, thrown out of the contest.
Yeah.
The Clippers had really no answer for Dallas at that point.
Yeah.
But Paul George and Leonard, this is what's expected from them in the playoffs. Load management was the time off that the teams had during the break, Charlton. Now they're back. And they scored or assisted on all but 2 points that the Clippers scored last night in the fourth quarter. So they were a dynamic duo coming down the stretch. But they didn't have to contend with Porzingis either because the game changed with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter when he left.
Yeah, it changes things when you throw people out. They give them usually an extra foul in the playoff games. Give them an extra technical. Don't throw technicals anyway unless someone throws a punch, not a push. Boston Celtics, a little bit of bad news, maybe good news. Gordon Hayward, remember he tore up his knee a couple years ago when he was up there in Utah? And now he's out 4 weeks with a right ankle sprain. I believe he's having a child too, so he may get some time off to go back to Boston and deal with that. But the Celtics forward, he'll be sidelined for about 4 weeks, suffering a severe right ankle sprain in Boston's Game 1 win over Philadelphia at Big C. I don't know if the Celtics would really miss Hayward, or do you think that's fool's gold, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, they would really need him for the size, and that's the same ankle he broke 2 years ago when he was up there in Utah, Charlton, and he had the high ankle sprain, a third-degree sprain on that ankle, which is going to keep him out some 4 weeks. The Celtics are going to need the size if they move into the next round past the Sixers, Charlton, because you can't consistently always go out there when your team is built a certain way and lose key elements of it.
Yep.
They've had injuries with Kemba Walker, and now you're looking at Tatum being out of, not Tatum, but
Hayward,
the kid being out of there, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, this is a team that in a short season, you can't afford injuries. But one of the things we've seen a lot of in this bubble is a lot of injuries with these players. So if Gordon Hayward could get back in less than 4 weeks, and if the Celtics can advance, it would be the finals most likely before he could come back.
Yeah, and he scored 12 points last night in 34 minutes. But again, his wife is expecting sometime next month, so we'll see. Wish him nothing but the best, he and his family. I want to jump to the world of Major League Baseball because there's always talk about different things. Major League Baseball, Cincinnati Reds and Kansas City Royals. That game scheduled for today is actually being pushed back to tomorrow because of some COVID-19 and some testing that they had. Different tests. They want to make sure they give it enough time to make sure it's a negative test. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, how many tests you're going to give in these sports, Charlton? You're consistently looking around, and COVID-19 is rearing its head everywhere, whether it's high school, college, professional. And you look at the amount of baseball games that have been missed already this year because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And every other day, there's a team that's testing positive for COVID-19, and games are being delayed. You're playing Russian roulette. You're making these people into lab guinea pigs.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. It's bad enough with the professional players because they get paid, but the college athletes who are totally lab guinea pigs are not getting a dime.
I want to bring something up. I know the Democratic Convention is going on tonight, too, and hopefully, I love listening to Senator Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Also, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bill Clinton, and Joe Biden going to speak tonight. So I put that on my DVR. But I want to say something that's more important to me. I know, again, people keep fighting. It was Justin Fields. They put him out there to say, go get a petition so people can play football. All that is Ohio State using a black man to get some free labor. They're going to send those petitions into Ohio State, and they're going to be able to market those people to buy paraphernalia for Ohio State. They're not going to get them to play football. The NCAA campuses, would you believe Notre Dame, they listen to Donald Trump, and they should have listened to Michelle Obama because Notre Dame opened their campus because POTUS was telling people go back to class, everything's safe. It'll just wash away. Well, after about a week on the campus, COVID-19 has been spiking on the campus of Notre Dame, Big C. The campus of Notre Dame is spiking in COVID-19. And now, if you think about it, Notre Dame has temporarily closed the campus amid the outbreak. They're not playing football. this is not even full contact. This is just kids showing up, and like you've been talking about, trading pathogens, even though POTUS says it's okay. Notre Dame has closed the campus to do online now after just a week of a failed experiment. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, just not Notre Dame, but North Carolina also has closed campus. So you're talking about 2 ACC conference football teams have closed campus in the same week with each other.
Yep.
So you got to be realistic about the science. I mean, you're making these kids being lab guinea pigs. So you're telling, okay, the rest of the student body can't be on campus, but it's safe for the football players to be out there on the field together.
Yeah.
And this is why it's all about money. It's not about the health and safety of these student athletes. And let's take student off the table when we start talking about these guys now.
Yeah.
Because they're not considered students. They're just considered athletes. Lab guinea pigs to go out there and make these universities some money. Because it's not about anything else other than getting some television revenue, Charlton. Because if you don't have butts in the seats, and that's what you play for as a fan. I think your friend Nick Saban was complaining last year about fans leaving the stadium early in those blowout games that they had against the Cupcakes. And so, the student body would leave.
Yeah.
And he was complaining about them leaving the stadium early. So how is he going to feel this year when Alabama's only talking about having 20% capacity in Bryant-Denny Stadium that seats 102,000 people,
Yeah.
and you only got 20% capacity in the stadium? What is your buddy Nick going to say about that when you don't have any butts in the seat?
He's going to go to the bank, Big C. Nick's going to go to the bank no matter what they do. And I really feel for kids because college is fun, but it's not fun when you land up in a hospital. And when Notre Dame is closing, you would think that's a school that's going to try to do the right thing. They call them Touchdown Jesus. They call it a Catholic institution, and you would think they would do more to take care of their kids. I would think, maybe I'm foolish for saying this, but I would think they would do more at Notre Dame to take care of their own kids, more so than other programs, just because of the mystique of it being a Catholic school.
Well, why would you think that? In Notre Dame, when everybody was canceling their season, they would play Notre Dame. Notre Dame was an independent.
Yeah.
They only had 4 or 5 games scheduled at the beginning of the year against ACC schools. And when those teams that they had long-standing rivalries with, Charleston, the West Coast teams, the Army Academy,
Yeah.
they said, okay, we'll go play an ACC schedule. We don't care.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has stated they don't care about the health of athletes. They want to keep those television contracts in place. They have a guaranteed money coming from NBC, Charlton, for the product that they put on the field. That's all that they're concerned about. They're not concerned about the athletes.
Yeah, it is perception. Today, the university announced that it's going to close the campus for at least 2 weeks in an attempt to control the growing COVID-19 outbreak, and it would shut down the campus entirely if those measures failed to stop the spread. Well, how's Notre Dame going to stop a spread that's still growing in the United States? That's the thing that's it's never bugged me, but a little bit flummoxed how an institution of higher learning can do that.
Where the students are going to go, Charlton? You got all those students that are on campus. Where are they going to go?
Well,
it's just like we talked about football players walking out of a locker room in the NFL. They're going 80 different directions.
Yeah.
And they're expecting to come back the next day from those directions that they went into. You got tens of thousands of students leaving the campus of Notre Dame. Where are they going to go to? To the Motel 6 down the street and all of them anchor down there?
Yeah.
Or they're going to travel back across the country to their home.
Yeah.
And I'm going to think that these kids are going to have to go back home to have a place to stay.
Well, you're very clairvoyant. President Reverend John Jenkins said in a video addressed to students, Big C, that noting that he had been inclined to take the step before the consulting with the health officials and that the school will close public spaces on campus. They're going to restrict dormitories to residents, and they're going to tell students who live off campus to go home. You must stay off campus and go home. You're going to tell a young kid away from home for the first time in his or her life that you can't come to, where they're going to go, like you said. These are young people. And, I mean, does Justin Fields understand what happened when Notre Dame shut down? They didn't need 230,000 signatures. They just had to listen to science.
Does anybody realize that Notre Dame is an international campus, Jonathan?
Yeah.
We're not talking about kids just from South Bend. We're talking about kids worldwide.
All over the world.
Go to the University of Notre Dame. It is an international campus.
Yeah.
Where people all over the globe come to learn. So my point is, what do you do with these kids who had to come from out of country to come back to campus this year?
Well, this thing called a lawyer, And college kids are not dumb, at least most of them are not. The University of North Carolina, as you talked about, the student newspaper, not the Fox News, student newspaper, is accusing the school of creating a coronavirus cluster by pushing kids to return to campus, only to have to reverse the course within a few days amid the outbreaks. And I think if you're a law firm and you want to hit the lotto, then look at what these kids have been forced into. The newspaper at North Carolina got it right, Big C. They've been pushed into it. They're not getting paid. They pay tuition, and it's supposed to keep you in a safe environment. This is not even about sports, because sports hasn't happened yet. Now, people say you got to play sports because you may get a chance to get a contract with the NFL or the NBA. If you're a mainstream student, you're not trying to get $1 million contract with a sports team. But when attorneys start writing those briefs, that every time Donald Trump gets sued, he hears his attorneys on the phone. I'm sure there has to be somewhere in North Carolina and also Indiana where lawyers can get together and say, we need some punitive damages for the medical care and the expenses you're going to charge these children. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I'm going to differ from you just a little bit in this. This is the reason why we've never seen a federal mandate on any of these issues put into place. And that is the reason for that, Charlton, is to keep the lawyers at bay. If there's a federal mandate that these things have to happen, then you have liability, culpability there. But up until that, Charlton, it is a voluntary action that each independent takes. These students are not under contract that they're obligated to attend classes. You have the option for online class. But because these students want to get into the social environment, Charlton, they're choosing to go to these campuses. I have this situation with my daughter because of the major that she has, biology. You have to at least attend some physical classes to pass biology. But, everything else you can do online.
Yeah.
So unless you have classes that mandate that you have to be on campus, it's all a voluntary situation to go on campus. So I think those lawyers are going to be held at bay because there's been no federal mandates in it or state mandates.
Yeah, well, the schools have money to guard against lawsuits, and I believe the lawsuits are going to happen, and they're going to leave it in the hand of a court judge or a jury to decide. That's what people tend to do. I want to go to the NFL.
You got to also understand that these universities are state entities.
Yeah.
They're not private institutions. Maybe Notre Dame might be, but they're state entities. So it's hard to sue yourself when it comes down to that. And that's what the judge has to look at, as well as any lawyer coming to play. You're looking at suing yourself when these institutions are funded by the state.
Yeah.
They're not funded by just private entities. They're funded by the state. So it's hard to go in and sue yourself.
Well, there'll be outside law firms that will look into it. I can pretty much 99% sure about that, Big C. I want to jump to the NFL because it's also a matter of COVID. Dallas Cowboy running back Ezekiel Elliott. Remember, I guess he had the COVID-19 test, I don't know, maybe a month ago. And he said in his own words that he wondered for several weeks during the NFL's COVID-19 shutdown how his infection would affect training camp. Now, a year after the star running back held out last year, he missed the entire preseason. That was based on a contract. And now he's a two-time rushing champion. He hasn't missed any during training camp, Big C, which is held at the team's headquarters about 30 miles north of Dallas in Frisco, Texas. But I think it's interesting about Ezekiel Elliott because he was saying that he probably said it worked out. He worked out for about a month because there's some complications that he did not work out for a month over complications of COVID-19. Here's an all-pro running back that said he did not work out for about a month because of complications to COVID-19. He's a multimillionaire, Justin Fields. Think about it. A guy that had complications and is a multimillionaire decided not to work out, but he did say something you've talked about, that it can cause your organs to have some issues, complications. So he has to make sure that his heart and his lungs are working well before he gets out there and gets chased around by 300-pound men. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan, I've been telling you that for the past couple of months. You keep saying people recover. No, they survive. That's the difference. You don't always recover. Ezekiel Elliott still won't recover completely, Charlton. He's a young athlete in the peak of condition of life, but it still affected him. And here's a guy that's in his mid-20s telling you that he has problems physically from COVID-19, not an old man such as myself telling you that, and people will walk around like the president, they recover. Yes, you might live, but your body has been permanently altered, Charlton. And who knows whether a player will eventually have a heart attack out on the field, Charlton, from the scarring that you get from COVID-19. These things are in play. You got to think about that. High risk is in play for athletes going out there trying to compete after having COVID-19.
Yeah, and everybody's going to wear their own measure. There's not one shoe that fits all, but I know Russell Westbrook is not playing tonight. He had COVID-19 also, and they're saying he's out for other reasons. But, it's all fair and love and war. Sometimes they don't disclose everything. I want to go over to Oslo, Norway, Big C. It's important that I say this. Olympic cross-country, a skiing champion, a two-time Olympic champion, was busted for cocaine and also reckless driving. In Oslo, Norway, two-time Olympic country skiing champion Peter Northug has admitted, he admitted, Big C. Now, he's a white guy, so listen to how they phrase it. He admitted to possessing cocaine, not having or using cocaine, if that makes sense to you, and speeding and driving under the influence of what? Alcohol or cocaine? When there's so many black men that have been incarcerated for marijuana, here's a white guy that says he will admit to possessing cocaine. So was he possessing the cocaine for distribution? Was he possessing the cocaine for trafficking? Or was he possessing the cocaine just to go on the powder on the downhill when he's going down the slopes? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's called having a lawyer. You constantly talk about going to court and having proper representation.
Yeah.
That's what he's able to afford. I mean, the average guy on the street, as you also quote from Tony Montana, don't use your own product because it doesn't leave you an out.
Yeah.
And so here's an individual, Charlton, because he's economically well off.
Yeah.
He knows how to play the system.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. If you don't, agree to whatever somebody's charging you with, and you bring a lawyer in to reword what's being done, you go to court.
Yeah.
And they have to disprove where you are in court. If you don't take that sobriety test, Charlton, and give them a blood or urine sample, they can't prove what's in your system. You have that right as an American.
Yeah.
But you also got to understand that comes from intelligence.
Yeah.
You just can't go say, I got an education from the street and I understand how to work the system.
Right.
The intelligence comes from having
Yeah.
an education to understand how to get out of things.
Yeah. It's amazing because he was driving at 168 miles per hour in a 110 miles per hour zone. What can you drive 110? But I guess in Europe, some places they don't have a speed limit.
In Europe, it's going to be in kilometers.
Yeah. Well, they had it at 168 over 110, so that's pretty fast. And then while driving under the influence of a substance and possession of narcotics. And I don't know what's going to happen with him, but I just noticed how many black men have been incarcerated for far less, and it's a shame. But everybody knows he's probably going to get off.
We can't take the world's laws and apply them here in the United States. They always tell you when you're traveling, make sure you abide by the laws of that country because you're not in the U.S.
Yeah.
And the penal system is different. We're not sure what it is in Norway.
Yeah.
But, when you're driving 168 kilometers, 110 kilometers is basically 55 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So you tack another 50 kilometers on top of that, Charlton, he's basically driving 80 miles an hour down the freeway, 85 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But to be pulled over, you don't get convicted by the officer who pulls you over and alleges what you have.
Right.
You have to go to court, as you always say. You got to go to court.
Yeah.
And you have to have enough money to hire an attorney. So if you're going to have this type of product in your car, make sure you have an attorney who's used to defending that type of product.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys who have that type of product happen to be attorneys, if that makes sense to you. But people get down the way they want to get down. NFL football news, injuries are mounting, Big C. It's like guys have taken whatever time off to do what they do, and maybe people don't stay in shape, but there's a lot of injuries happening all over the NFL. And I know Canada decided to cancel football for COVID-19 and other issues. And I'm just wondering if smart guys are saying they have an injury as opposed to they don't want to play with COVID. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it all depends on the type of injury that a player is going to get. But players are not all that willing to play with COVID-19.
Yeah.
So many players have pre-existing conditions personally as well as family members, Charlton. They have children that this stuff can affect. And they're starting to understand the science. They may not have opted out early when they had the opportunity, but if you get into training camp and you come up with an injury, Charlton, that's still an opt-out.
Yeah, it's an opt-out no matter how. I hear that Michael Spinks tried to opt out of his fight with Mike Tyson back in the day, but he didn't. He said he'll opt out after he got the money. He was smart. He got the money before he opted out in the first 90 seconds. NHL hockey playoffs St. Louis Blues and Vancouver Canucks. They're tied at 2 in Canada. As the good old boys they're skating. It might be thin ice, Big C, but they're still skating on the ice, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the NHL, just like the NBA, has gotten it right with the bubble. I know a couple of players that have opted out of the bubble. I know Tuukka Rask left the bubble the other day. He's the goalie for the Boston Bruins because of COVID-19. Here's a goalie that was in the Stanley Cup just 2 years ago in a 4-3 loss to the St. Louis Blues in their first Stanley Cup title, Charlton. But NHL hockey, they've gotten it right. They're all playing in Toronto in the Scotia Center where the Raptors won the NBA title last year. But being on Frozen Pond, Charlton, up north, that's their NBA. I mean, it's a lively sport in Canada. Everybody knows hockey from the time that they put a bottle in their mouth and they put a hockey stick in their hand.
Yeah, they put a hockey stick in their hands, too. Auto racing in London, England, Ferrari and McLaren, they're working together to make racing better. Anytime you can drive a Ferrari or a McLaren, then money is not probably not a problem. But when you get to race those cars, you think they're doing a better job than the guy who was arrested with the cocaine in his system, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you got a Ferrari and a McLaren working together, those are the type of cars you go into the dealership and you don't ask what the cost is or what the miles per gallon.
Yeah, and I'm sure they don't give you they give you, what's that mustard you guys, Grey Poupon, you guys have that Grey Poupon, you're always spreading it over pickles and potatoes and your sandwiches and all that good stuff. I know people are going to do what they got to do in life. Today has been to me, I started the show by saying how proud I am of my mother for raising a great family with aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews and grandchildren and doing a great job. And then how Michelle Obama, she spoke in a way of honesty, integrity to the whole world about how much trash Donald Trump has brought to the White House. You ever have trash under your sink? Most people take trash out every day, maybe every other day. If it smells real bad, you take it out. How do you have trash that stays in the house for 4 years and you don't get it out, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what America has been complacent with. When you sit around and people want to say, well, my vote doesn't matter, it's not going to make a difference. Well, when only 60% of a society votes, that always gives an advantage to the person who is the least, respected among the vote or the least most qualified to be in that position, because all those disenfranchised people saying, well, my vote doesn't matter. And that's why in the election this year, it's not just about voting Democrat, Charlton.
Yeah.
It's about voting for who's going to do something for you.
Yep.
The Democrats can no longer sit around and say, I garnered a black vote, I garnered a brown vote. No, you can't do that. You have to put on paper what you're going to do for that vote. For decades, these people have supported you and given you powerful positions, and yet you've done them nothing in return.
Yeah.
No favors. And that's what politics needs to become now.
Yeah.
You have to say what you're going to do for the people. You need to be able to stand up there in front of that mic and say, how are you going to do lifelong changes for these people? You always talk about reparations. Reparations is a long-term deal. But you have to talk about how you're going to do an immediate impact over the next 4 to 8 years to alter these people's lives if you want them to vote for you.
You got America. Register to vote. Text VOTE to 26797. That's 26797. And tell all your friends, tell them Big C and the NFL said vote now. Let's make this one of the biggest votes in the history of the universe. Just go out and make sure you make it happen. I know everybody has the chance to sit back and relax and do the pause in life, whether it's praying about things or talking about things. If you write down your problems on a piece of paper, usually it's easier to solve those problems. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as I see these colleges sending their students home from school because of COVID-19, you look at North Carolina and you look at the number of schools that are down there on Tobacco Road, North Carolina State, Duke, and as well as several others, Charlton, and they're saying that it's okay for the football players to be there and catch COVID-19, Charlton. And I also want to say thank you to those frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. Mad respect to you for the admirable job that you do every day.
And when you speak, make sure that you speak with meaning that you speak with the clarity, you don't mince words, and when you do it, people have more respect for you. You can have respect, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.